Okay, so hola. We are going to be talking about el tiempo condicional, or the conditional tense today. This one is actually different from other verb tenses or anything else that you've learned because you don't follow the same rules. And we've been switching it up a little more lately with the commands, and this one is also different on its own. Might take a little bit of getting used to, but you will get used to it. So let's get going. The first thing to be aware of is we use is we want to know qué es el tiempo condicional. What is the conditional tense? So what we use a conditional to do is to talk about things that we would do. So usamos el condicional para hablar de cosas que nosotros would do, que haríamos, what we would do. So anytime you see a verb conjugated in the way that you're going to see on the next few slides, you're going to have to think, okay, I would do my homework, or Senora would grade the papers. And there's, of course, going to be like a but or if or something along those lines there. Se usa para, we use it for, hablar de situaciones hipotéticas, talking about hypothetical situations along the lines of, well, I would go, but I have to do too much work. Hacer una pregunta con mucha cortesía, so to ask a question with a lot of courtesy, very courteously, to be very polite. And so that would be along the lines of, me podrías pasar la sal? Would you pass me the salt? And then also with the clausula si, and this is that word si that does not have an accent. We're going to work this at the end of these notes a little bit. There'll be a few expressions that you'll learn because this is a very common usage. So the big thing to realize when we form the conditional that's really different for regular verbs is that no quites nada. That means you do not get rid of anything. You keep the entire infinitive. Y añade, add, ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. And yes, these are the same endings that you use, of course, for the imperfect past tense. But the difference is to use the conditional, you add these endings to the end of the infinitive. You don't get rid of anything. So we have a couple of examples on the next slide. So we have ir to go. Iría, I would go. Irías, you would go. Iría, once again, he or she would go or you would go formal. Iríamos, we would go. Iríais, you all would go, and irían, they would go or you all would go. We also have estar, to be. Estaría, I would be. Estarías, you would be. Estaría, he or she would be, or you formal would be. Estaríamos, we would be. Estaríais, you all would be, or estarían, they would be. And I chose these two verbs because they're ones that are often irregular in other verb tenses, but I wanted you to see that they are regular here. What you're going to do now is pause the video for a moment, go to Página 2, choose two more verbs, so dos verbos más, preferably from the vocab list for this new unit, y conjúgalos, conjugate them, and then have me check your work. Once you're set with that and I've okayed what you've done so far, feel free to move on. So now, we're going to talk about the verbos irregulares, irregular verbs in the conditional. So hay unos verbos con raíces, or stems, which is the front part, irregulares en el condicional. And what's going to happen is, like you've seen with some other verb tenses, that they use the regular ending. So usan las terminaciones regulares. They still use the same regular endings. So for haber, they're going to have abra, to say there would be. Tener, tendrá. Decir, dir. Saber, sabra. Caber, which means to fit. Cabra. Salir, which means, of course, still to leave. Sabra. Hacer, ar. Poder, podra. Querer, quer. Poner, pondra. And venir, vendra. And at the top of Página 3, you have un ejemplo, one example, querer, to want, and you can see that you use that irregular first part with the two R's, and then just add the same endings that you were doing previously. So you have querría, querrías, querría, querríamos, querríais, querrían. What you want to do now is pause the video one more time, choose one more irregular verb from the list on Página 2 and conjugate it, have me check over it, and then move on to the last part of these notes. So now we are going to talk about what we call C clauses y el condicional. Now, we are going to give you a few expressions with a few different C clauses that you're likely to see that you might be more expected to work with. With that said, you're not expected to learn any of the grammar around this. You will see some verb conjugations that look really weird. These are really more vocabulary, just expressions for you to use, not grammar that you need to know, okay? So if you see one of these expressions in the first part of a sentence, and sometimes actually in the second part of a sentence, but usually the first part, you see yo fuera, which could be if I were or if I went. Si yo estuviera, which would also mean if I were. Si yo tuviera, if I had. Or si yo pudiera, if I could or if I were able to. Use the conditional in the second part of the sentence. So what we're going to do here on the following slides is you are going to see sentences with some illustrations along with the with some along with sorry about that. I was sitting in my car recording this and something distracted me, but also some sentences with illustrations, and I am going to give you the translation of the sentence en inglés. So it's important to make sure you're listening to make sure you get the information. So we're going to start off, if I can collapse this again, with si yo fuera, as it means if I were. So starting off, si yo fuera tú, reciclaría toda la tarea del primer semestre. Translation, if I were you, I would recycle all the homework from first semester. The second example, si yo fuera profesor o profesora, usaría Canvas para todo. If I were a teacher, I would use Canvas for everything. Top of página 4, we have si yo fuera otra vez, si yo fuera again, but in this case to mean if I went. Si yo fuera al desierto, vería un paisaje muy diferente. If I went to the desert, I would see a very different landscape. Si yo fuera al bosque, estaría en un lugar con muchos árboles. If I went to the forest, I would be in a place with a lot of trees. Moving on to si yo estuviera to talk about location or how you're feeling. So si yo estuviera en la playa, jugaría con la arena. If I were at the beach, I would play with the sand. Si yo estuviera cerca de un río, pescaría. If I were near a river, I would fish. And to finish up, last few examples here. We have si yo tuviera, if I had. Si yo tuviera un carro híbrido, compraría menos gasolina. If I had a hybrid car, I would buy less gasoline. Si yo tuviera muchas botellas de plástico, las lavaría y las reciclaría. If I had a lot of plastic bottles, I would wash them and I would recycle them. And finally, si yo pudiera, if I could or if I were able to, either is fine. Si yo pudiera usar menos plástico, lo haría. If I could use less plastic, I would do it. Si yo pudiera eliminar la contaminación, sería la científica más inteligente del mundo. If I could eliminate contamination, I would be the smartest scientist in the world. So these are really just some examples to show you what these types of sentences look like. You'll be seeing them a lot because they are a very common use of the conditional. That's it for these notes. We're getting towards the end here. Adios.